Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun. Well, viewers, we did promise that we would come back and drive a Montego after having done a walk around of this very car back in July. This car is owned by Patrick, who has a huge collection of Maestros, Montegos and other sort of Austin Rover cars, including the SD3 Rover, the 213S that we filmed on the same day as this Montego. Now it's actually got a handbrake that works, the sills have been addressed, it's got a full MOT and it's ready for a drive, so I'm looking forward to that later. We won't spend too long looking at the interior because we've already looked at it. One thing I would say, the central locking is actually working, which is brilliant. Still got the wooden door caps, which is fantastic. I have now been offered a Van den Pla Maestro, sort of Montego. We've done lots of Van den Pla Maestro action, Van den Pla Montego to actually have a go in at some point. But we'll see if it on the channel, I don't know, over the next few months probably. 5-speed gearbox, Honda one. You could get electric rear windows in this on the Van den Pla models. This only has ones in the front. Exactly the same dashboard as in the Maestro Mayfair that's right in front of me there. The post facelift ones were a little bit different. The blanking plates there are actually for the rear wipers, of course. On this saloon you don't need them. But one thing I've noticed different from a Maestro Mayfair, this car's got an intermittent wipe. It's actually, I think, a variable intermittent wipe in this, which is very fancy. Same problem which afflicts the Maestros, afflicts the Montegos, and that is the headlining, which seems to be disintegrating, particularly on this side. I'm actually going to get in the other side because there's a little bit too much of headlining down there. You can see this is still a pre-facelift car because the Mayfairs were not made after the late '88 facelift. The rib tail lights and a few other details tell you that this is an earlier car. There should really be an Austin badge there, but I don't think ever it was fitted with one. It will be on the logbook as an Austin, but after the Mayfair models, apart from the Mini, were discontinued in October '88, all cars that were formerly Austin just became Maestro, Montego, Metro, that kind of thing. But if we actually look at the front just briefly, we can see it does say Montego on there, but it's still got the Austin Rover logo, which again tells me that yes, it is actually an Austin rather than just a Montego. So let's get in the back. Little bit more legroom in this. The wheelbase is, I think, slightly longer in these. Yeah, there's a little bit more legroom in here. Still got the problem with the headliner, and this side we've actually got a bit of headliner still there. I think Patrick is going to have to change this. Manual sunroof, nice wooden door caps, armrest is down there. So yeah, you know, the Maestro's a comfortable car in the back. This is even better. This has got more space. And we will actually be testing soon on No Budget Reviews a Montego Countryman, which will have even more rear space because it's the estate. See if this one's actually got any access to the glove box. Yes, it has. There we go. I'm not going to put the secret mission documents into there today. There should be, I think, some kind of gear lever gator there. It looks a bit sort of bare like that. Perhaps it's been changed for one from a different model, but There it's actually sitting down, that's what's happened. The handbrake also works, which is great. I like functioning handbrakes, viewers. It means your car doesn't actually run away when you park it. It's obviously an advantage. Right, let's open a bit. I think you can do this from the inside, but we'll do it from this side only. We'll do it from here. There we go. Hold on a second, viewers. Okay, right. Wow. Again, a lot of space in here. Awful lot of space in here, and the sill height is really good in comparison with lots of other saloon cars of the 1980s. I'm thinking about things like, I don't know, Ford Granada Mark II. That's got a very, very high sill on it. Not quite the same type of car, but you get the idea. And yeah, the spare wheels under there and everything. We'll just shut that. Of course, we've got signs of this car's previous life. A certain Welsh-based YouTube channel that drove this a few years ago. And of course, the slightly sweary beige forum. Your motoring is our concern. Right, let's take a look under the bonnet, shall we? Very different under here from, you know, a number of other Montegos, which actually, they came anything from 1.3 upwards. Only some of the very early cars had a 1.3 option, and I don't think I'd recommend that, to be honest. I think that would be very slow. There we go, the program condition control. We have got fuel injection on this. As you can see, it proudly says EFi. And I'm looking forward to not having to fiddle around with carburetors. You know, that's my preference, really. Although some people do like tuning them, which is great. Oil is just there. O-Series engine originally came out, I think, in about 1978 in the Morris Marina, and was used until the early 90s when they weren't able to certify them for Euro 1 emissions regulations. So you don't see any O-Series engined Maestros or Montegos after late 1992. Interesting sort of oil filter arrangement here, where the pipe just sort of ends there. That's interesting. Perhaps there would have been something on there originally, I don't know. Warning contains asbestos. I think we'd maybe better maybe go for a drive. Maybe that will make the asbestos go away. It's interesting, viewers. This has a Honda PG1 gearbox in it, unlike the Volkswagen gearboxes are 1.3 and 1.6 models. And it doesn't feel how I'd expect really at all. Mind you, it feels similar to the Tomcat Coupe that Mr. Richardson Furious Driving had. So I have driven that car. I drove it in June 2019, and it does feel quite similar to that. It says 98,000 miles on the clock, so it's not the sort of first flush of youth for this. And Honda PG1 gearboxes do go a little bit floppy after very high mileage. So this is a 115 brake horsepower 2-litre engine with electronic fuel injection, but the base model, the 1.3, good old A series engine with 68 horsepower. The 1.6 S series, the Montego didn't get the R series that the early Maestros had. 1.6 S series, 85 horsepower. There was a carburetted version of this, and the Mayfair was actually available from about February '86. With either fuel injection or a carburettor. The carburettor engine, a little bit less power than this one, around 105 horsepower. Naturally, there was the crazy MG Montego Turbo, as demonstrated by Steve Soper and Ian Ogilvy in that very, very famous early video that is all over YouTube. I do like Ian Ogilvy because we like Return of the Saint on this channel, viewers. And of course, there were some diesels from a company called Perkins, known as the Perkins Suprema NDI, but as usual, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. I must say, viewers, we've driven a lot of Maestros. I've driven 4 Maestros, both 1.3 and 1.6 litre engines. All either using a Volkswagen 5-speed gearbox or a 3-speed automatic. this Montego with its 2-litre engine and its Honda PG1 gearbox is absolutely fantastic. It does make the car a little bit easier to drive, just a little bit more power. And the engine, it's not the smoothest engine, but it's, you know, it's reasonably smooth. The O series eventually became the M series that was used in the R8 Rover 200s, and then the T series that was used in the later R8s, and then in all sorts of other cars like the Rover 800, the Rover 600, and the HHR Rover 400. They did of course use the T series turbo and the 800 as well. But yes, feels pretty pleasant. The ride is very similar to a Maestro. There's no sort of getting away from the fact these cars do share a platform and many components. Unfortunately, this road is quite bad, and so it makes things look a lot worse than they are. But I like this. I prefer driving this to a Maestro. I always thought I would prefer these to a Maestro. Don't get me wrong, I love Maestros, but I think this is better. I don't know what it is. I don't know if the suspension's very slightly different in this or something like that, but it just feels a little bit more refined. Right, viewers, the mount is back in the way because that's the way it goes on No Budget Reviews, and we have got some wiper action going on as well. The funny thing about these wipers is they don't quite park properly half the time. It's probably why you might see them at various positions when the wipers are actually off. The intermittent wipe for some reason on this car is a bit of a mind of its own. There is a switch here to adjust the frequency of the intermittent wipe, but it doesn't seem to work properly, so I don't know really what's going on. And it's still going to park there. But yes, I always thought, even years ago, before I ever drove any Maestros, that I would prefer a Montego, and it's absolutely the case. I do prefer these Montegos. They're far more kind of me. This is a good combination of engine and gearbox. You could get an automatic, of course, as well with a 2-litre Montego. I would probably prefer the fuel-injected one because it seems to be a lot less hassle. We've driven that Mayfair earlier on today, Maestro Mayfair 1.3. That, even though it's got an auto choke, you have to sort of fiddle around with it to get it to start half the time. This, you don't have any problems. It's all sort of taken care of for you, and it's still got the pleasant handling characteristics. I imagine prodigious torque steer you got in the turbo with 150 horsepower. We'll look at some Montego trim levels in a bit more depth a bit later on, but compared with that 1.3 Mayfair, if we're driving on the same road, I've got no problem whatsoever hitting 70. I'm doing that right now, and there's no problem getting up to 70. Much quieter, much more willing to rev. Just a little bit more pleasant car to drive. I mean, it's a little bit bigger than a Maestro perhaps, and some people love the hatchback shape. I know my grandfather did because he had 5 Maestros in a row, so he preferred that more practical shape. He probably could have driven one of these, but he preferred the Maestro, which is fine. But I just think this is, of this design of these two cars, this is getting sort of really where the sort of sweet spot is in terms of it. I mean, if I get to drive a Maestro or Montego Turbo, I will very much enjoy it, but given those cars cost anything now up to £18,000 to buy, whereas you can still pick up a Montego for under £1,000, maybe not sort of Van den Pla, those are really rare. I don't think you can pick those up for that sort of money. Perhaps like, I don't know, 1.6L or one of the 2 litres or something like that. But you know, we'll go back now, read off some trim levels for the Montego, and then in a future video you'll be seeing a Montego Countryman as well. Oh viewers, Why am I not surprised that having driven this wonderful Montego Mayfair that I actually want one? I think a Maestro is a really fun car. I think they're great, but having driven this, I think it's just a little bit nicer to drive. It's just got a nicer powertrain in it, nicer gearbox. There's a bit more room in this. Styling, I don't know. I think both of them are just a really sort of nice retro looking shape now, although they were perhaps a bit awkward when they came out. But yes, I've really enjoyed it. Anyway, let's look at some trim levels for the Montego. These are the saloon ones, by the way. Base, I think, was the only trim you could get with a 1.3 engine. L, HL, HLS. HLS ones are really rare. They were pre-Mayfair. The SL, SLX, those are sort of later ones. Vanden Plas, of course, we will be looking at a Vanden Plas at some point. The Clubman, the LX, the Advantage, those are very rare now. The SI, which is like a kind of junior MG. The GTI, I don't really know what the GTI replaced, why they needed to have a GTI and an MG Montego, but there we go. The GSI, which replaced the Mayfair. The GSI Executive, which replaced the Vanden Plas, those are very nice. And of course the MG 2-litre injection and the turbo. The car was actually also made for the Indian market under the name Rover Montego, although Rover Montego is not exactly correct for these cars because they never wore the Rover badge. They were, of course, featured in a brochure with, you know, Rover cars, and you know, some of them were on the V5 registered as a Rover Montego, but the name Montego was used after October '88 on its own. So viewers, with your hard-earned budget up to £1,000 or possibly slightly more if you want something like a Mayfair or a Vanden Plas, should you consider a Montego? Well, I quite like this car. You know, they do have their problems. The interior trim is quite brittle. The headliner, as you can see, those are a bit tricky to you know, put right if you don't find a, you know, a complete one. And body panels and glass and things like that are getting a little bit difficult to find. But I think these cars are sort of much better than the contemporary reviewers often said that they were. And we're not just talking about the forbidden fuel ones, which were very beloved of people like the RAF and things like that. Yes, it's been a pleasure to actually finally drive one after all these years. So thank you for watching this episode of No Budget Reviews. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below. And yes, social media links are down in the description. We'll see you again soon.